Let's see the findings of this case step by step. At first, you can see the uterus here. Of course, this is a transvaginal ultrasound, and this is an abortion follicle, of course. And as I mentioned before, that the urinary bladder should be up to the left side here. And of course, this is an empty urinary bladder, and so the uterus here is an RVF uterus. So this is a 3rd degree RVF uterus. Of course, there's something here, as you can see. And of course, you can suspect a polyp. Okay, and then after doing 3D ultrasound, when you want to see the picture by 3D ultrasound, you'll notice again this. But if you want to stress again on the 3D ultrasound picture, before I get to the 3D ultrasound picture, I want to show you another plane here in which there is something is appearing here. And of course, you may diagnose it as a myoma, for example. This is the endometrium, and so you may think of this as a myoma, and this is not actually. And when you do the 3D ultrasound again, you may find this picture, and so you think this is a case of, again, you can see here, this is the 3D orthogonal planes, and of course the active is the A box, and so you may think of unicornuate uterus. And of course, this is abnormal. This is real abnormal, that this is not the normal endometrium, and so you think of a unicornuate uterus. And when you continue the diagnosis, you may have a transverse section of the uterus, as you can see here, and this is the endometrium, and this is something abnormal in this picture. I want to show you in the 3D orthogonal plane how we can work on this plane, okay? How we can, of course, you save the 3D ultrasound, and you can work on the 3D later. And so let's see how we get the 3D. Of course, these are saved data, and you can use the 3D ultrasound in the saved data on your saved picture to get what you want, or to get the volume, and you analyze this volume to reach the diagnosis. So let's see with each other now how I work on this 3D ultrasound scan or volume. As you can see in this volume, okay, I can move it, and so I can get a cut section here, and this is the section, of course, this is the A box, and you see the difference or the movement of the cut section on the endometrium. And so when I'm moving here of these cut sections, you will notice that unicornuate uterus is appearing, and so you may diagnose this case is just as a unicornuate uterus. But let me use now the other buttons. Excuse me, because I am the one using the buttons, and I'm the one also recording. So look at the picture at the upper left corner, okay? And notice that I'm working now on certain planes and moving. You notice the movements of these buttons in which I want to reach a specific picture. And while I'm rotating this picture and working on that, please concentrate on the upper left picture here. You notice how I'm moving it and I'm changing it, and this is very important because you are analyzing actually the whole picture at the same time, okay? You notice that in these rotations, while I'm rotating the picture, I completely change it, the acquisition, and suddenly you notice something appearing in this picture, okay? Here, when I'm working like this, you'll notice something here is appearing. That means that's not only a unicornuate uterus. Notice that the analysis and the using, or the proper using of this technology is very important, because if you miss this, or you miss this diagnosis, you may think that this is just a unicornuate uterus. But actually, when we still working on this plane and we move it from side to side and use the buttons of the analysis here until we're reaching this picture I need. Okay, so this is the picture which you can see now, change it completely. As you can see here, I just rotated the picture until I found that there is something related to that endometrium. And of course here the picture completely changed. I put an arrow to see with me here. As you can see here I'm not focusing on the endometrium, if you notice. So if you look at this picture as just a 2D ultrasound picture, of course you will miss this diagnosis completely. And if you use even the 3D orthogonal planes and you have the first plane in which we started, you think that it's just a unicornuate uterus. But after having that analysis by 3D ultrasound and by using the 3D orthogonal planes and properly understand that that was not just a unicornuate uterus, actually there is a horn. There is what's called rudimentary horn. And the rudimentary horn actually can be communicating or non-communicating. And missing that diagnosis would be completely unacceptable, actually, because if this lady got pregnant, of course, if it is a communicating horn, so she may get pregnant in this communicating horn, and so she at risk, of course, of ectopic pregnancy, and she's at risk of rupture of this ectopic pregnancy. And of course, this is not just a rupture of a tube, this is a rupture of the uterus. And this is completely dangerous for this lady. She would have a severe internal hemorrhage, and as you know, that risky condition or risky condition or risky situation. And if this horn is non-communicating horn, and that's mostly a non-communicating horn, unfortunately still she's at risk of course this horn is functioning, can be a functioning non-communicating horn, and if it's functioning, so there is still accumulation of blood with each menstruation or the menses. And unfortunately most of the cases I found or I met had that bleeding inside this rudimentary horn, and mostly were misdiagnosed as ovarian cysts. And so please, just what I want from this video or from this notification, please, when you suspect an anomaly, please, you have to be very precise, and you should investigate it thoroughly. And just by 3D orthogonal planes and by the proper diagnosis of these orthogonal planes, you may find or you may reach the diagnosis. As I told you at first, that you may think that this anomaly is not just as I mentioned here. You look to these different pictures, of course, of the ovaries, of the Doppler or whatever, but as you can see here, you may think that that's just a unicornuate uterus, while it's not actually, and it's, as I told you, it's not that diagnosis. Rudimentary horn. Thank you.